Anthony Lynn, mystery candidate. 11 of those. Nate Scheelhaase will be the 11th officially interviewed for the job. That's expected to happen tomorrow on the West Coast. And then maybe shortly thereafter, we have our next Cleveland Browns head coach. I kind of want to go through a couple of things that happened this week because the Browns were taking a beating. And in the moment, it was pretty hilarious, but also at the same time, a little unfair. And I want to explain why. First, let's start with the Mike McDaniel situation, okay? Not only did he tell the Browns thanks, but no thanks, but after that, he schedules an interview with the Buffalo Bills for the head coach job to replace Sean McDermott, and then he pulls out of that one.
And he also hasn't even, there's been no announcement from the Chargers that he's accepted that offensive coordinator role. So Mike McDaniel.
Because he's apparently flirting with the Las Vegas Raiders to be their head coach.
So he's out there in his own world just doing whatever way the wind is blowing is what Mike McDaniel is doing. So is really what I'm gathering from that.
He did the Browns a favor. He really did them a favor.
By getting out of the way.
By canceling. And then there was the whole situation with the Ravens' new head coach.
Which that was always, the outrage on that, I said at the time, because that was Thursday. I said all day Thursday, like people want to get up in arms about this. It does not matter. Jesse Minter, in my opinion, would have never been a fit for the Browns. He runs a 3-4. Your best player that just set football history. He just etched his name in the record books of the National Football League. He thrives in a completely different scheme than what Jesse Minter runs.
Right. So what happened was Minter met with the Ravens, I believe it was on Wednesday. They offered him the job. He called the Browns to say, hey, I have an offer. I am still interested in speaking to you about the head coach opening. I'm prepared for the interview, ready to go. However, if you're not prepared to offer at the end of the interview, or at least at the end of the day there, I need to take the current offer that I already have in my pocket. And the Browns just basically said, hey, we respect that. We understand that. Congratulations on the offer. But we have a process we're going through. We have candidates that we still want to talk to, that we still need to speak with before we come to a conclusion on our search. And they basically mutually decided, hey, let's not waste each other's time. He's going to go ahead and accept the offer in Baltimore, and then the Browns were just going to move forward with their coaching search, and that became a whole deal of where, okay, nobody wants the Browns job because they're the Browns. This coaching search is completely off the rails. That's 2 guys in a week that told them thanks but no thanks, and that just became a whole spiraling thing on social media, right? And then, of course, Tom Pelissero gets on the Rich Eisen show, says what he says about the essays and, just how data-driven, which, by the way, is nothing new. We all know the Browns are data-driven. They've been that way for a decade. It has evolved in some respects, but, that's just how they do things. And, if you want to work for the Cleveland Browns, you got to kind of fit into their... The
way they do things.
For lack of a better phrase, their corporate philosophy.
That's anywhere. That's any job. That's any walk of life. That's any organization. And for these people that want to rip the Browns, what's going on in Arizona with the Cardinals? Who's going to be the next head coach over there? I don't see people tripping over themselves to be the head coach of the Cardinals. What did Pittsburgh do yesterday? They hired Mike McCarthy before they even met with Chris Shula for a second time, the defensive coordinator of the LA Rams. or Nate Scheelhaase, the passing game coordinator of the Rams, who the Browns are going out to LA to interview Monday. They didn't even get to their second round of the interviews. They had no process. They just, Mike McCarthy's won a Super Bowl and been a head coach a couple of times, and he's from Pittsburgh, so it makes sense. He'll help us go 8-9 or 9-8. Hire Mike McCarthy. There was no process involved there. So for everybody that wants to drag the Browns, I get it wasn't New York where it was as easy as you take, John Harbaugh out to a nice dinner and he's your next head coach. Wasn't that easy because you don't have Jackson Dart, you don't have Cameron Scatabo, you don't have Malik Neighbors and some of those pieces that they have, but you're certainly in a better spot than the Steelers, I'd say. You're in a better spot than the Cardinals, I'd say. The Raiders are playing in the sand despite having the number 1 overall pick and the golden boy and Fernando Mendoza. Who's lining up to coach him? I don't see people tripping over themselves to get out to the desert and that new dome stadium. They've got a ton of selling points and they're having just as difficult of a time as the Browns. So everybody's wanting to bury the Browns when they're top 2 candidates, in my opinion, the entire way, because NFL insider Jordan Schultz said it on Tuesday. Scheelhaase and Udinski are still available to be hired. And unless Udinski gets hired today in his first interview with the Buffalo Bills, the Browns have this process playing out the way that I think they wanted to play it out the entire time, despite a couple guys dropping out along the way.
Yeah, and, I said this last week. The Browns don't care, really, that they're being laughed at or that their process is being dismissed.
And even Pelissero said that. Pelissero was saying that they act independently of the 31 other NFL teams.
Do we have that clip of Pelissero on Rich Eisen so folks can hear what he said, just to, for the whole context of the conversation? Because it's again, he's right in a lot of respects. The essay part kind of got overblown a little bit. And so here, this is Tom Pelissero. He was on the Rich Eisen show. Here's what he had to say about the Browns coaching search process.
The Browns search process and interview process, which they have run a number of times, is unlike any other in the NFL. And it plays to certain types of candidates. They are a data-driven operation in Cleveland. And so they spend an extraordinary amount of time gathering data on their coaching candidates. You're talking about taking a personality test. You're talking about writing an essay. You're talking about completing homework assignments going into both the first and the second rounds of interviews. It plays toward the types of candidates that they have in the mix, which is very, very smart people in a lot of cases that just often happen to be tall, thin guys who came from Ivy League schools, so that's certainly not a requirement. That's the type of candidate generally that is going to fit into a data-driven environment.
And again, that's Tom Pelissero on the Rich Eisen show, kind of explaining the whole process here. And look, you have to do homework for all these coaching interviews, whether you're interviewing to be the head coach of the New York Football Giants or the Cleveland Browns or the Arizona Cardinals or the Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to know what the heck you're talking about. You got to know the existing personnel of the team. You kind of got to know the personnel of the teams within the division that you're going to be matching up with and the schemes they run. You got to know, okay, these are the problems with what was done last year and why you ended up winning 5 games. This is how I would solve those problems. Yeah, there is homework involved. Okay? Now, do I think that Andrew Berry handed him a Scantron test and a number 2 pencil and said, make sure you color inside the oval? No. All right, so that's part one. Here's some more Pelissero with Rich Eisen, kind of going in on who I believe the top 2 are and who I think it's a coin flip right now between. And that's Grant Udinski, the offensive coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Nate Scheelhaase, the pass game specialist for the Los Angeles Rams.
Grant Udinski, Nate Scheelhaase, 2 big brain dudes who, again, happen to be tall, thin guys. They both are in the mix. Udinski's there now. Scheelhaase expected to interview on Monday. If it's not one of those two, then the other candidates that we know of as of right now are Jim Schwartz, who's the defensive coordinator, who they want to keep regardless, and Todd Monken, who does not fit in any of the categories that I just mentioned, other than he's a very intelligent guy who's run successful offenses in the NFL. I would tell you, Rich, the sense is the Browns are very intrigued by the Udinski and Scheelhaase possibilities. Those guys fit the pattern. If they ultimately the Browns on their scorecards that they collect do not decide that those guys are the best candidates, then the belief within the league is the default would be Jim Schwartz. Then you're trying to figure out, all right, well, now what do you do on offense to pair him? Who is willing to take that offensive coordinator job? There's just a lot of steps in the process, Rich, but this is not new. They have done this for a long time, and it's just, as one high-powered coaching agent said to me the other day when we were going through the list of all the openings, the Browns are the Browns. Their process is different than everyone else's, and we'll see where it leads them this time.
And it would be nice if the process ended up with this team being a consistent winner. And that is also, I think, Nick, part of the issue right now and the lack of patience that folks have and why every time something happens with this coaching search, the keyboard warriors are ready to pounce and laugh at them and make fun of them. It's because this franchise is a perennial loser outside of the 2 seasons with Kevin Stefanski, and it's low-hanging fruit.
I will say, though, just to give a devil's advocate argument, and it's the one thing that you were really making me mad about Friday when you were saying that you didn't care for any of these candidates and stuff.
I still don't. But
I think this is the one thing, though, Daryl, that the Browns are actually good at. Like in 2016, they wanted to hire Sean McDermott. That's what their process, driven by Paul DePodesta and the guardrails that he put in place.
But here's the thing. If they were good at it, then they would have hired Sean McDermott. But instead, they hired Hugh Jackson, which means they're not good at it.
We know what happened there.
Then they later hired Freddie Kitchens.
When they didn't want to.
When their process told them to hire Kevin Stefanski. Again, they might be good at the process. They're not good at hiring.
So their last 2 processes led them to Sean McDermott and Kevin Stefanski. I think this process leads them to either Grant Udinski or Nathan Scheelhaase.
Which means they're promoting Jim Schwartz. I'm kidding.
And
I'm not kidding. We'll find out soon.
Yeah, as soon as Monday night. I subscribe to a philosophy, though, that you're wasting your time in this league if you're not hiring a young, offensive-minded coach from the Kubiak, Shanahan, McVay trees. Because if you hire somebody like a Jim Schwartz or you hire somebody like a Dan Campbell in Detroit, who's a really good coach, you get Ben Johnson, and you get a really good offensive coordinator that's in there, and you have success, and you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, and they're doing great things for you. But the second that offensive coordinator's gone, well, you see what happened to the Detroit Lions this year, and they weren't really all that great, and they didn't even make it to the NFL playoffs. So I definitely think the Browns' process here is sound to go with either Udinski or Scheelhaase. To your point, though, now they got to just get over the hump. Like, it feels like your process is
Let's get to the finish line. Let's go.
You guys are heading down the right street here.
Pick a name, any name. Let's go. Let's get it done.
I think either one of these guys could be a hit, but you got to cross the finish line. You can't fumble at the 1-yard line here because it'll get scooped up and head in the other direction real fast. We know that as Browns fans.
Speaking